chance comment from one of you on a completely unrelated video has set me on a path to installing a kitchen lighting system that we're absolutely delighted with. In today's video, I'm going to share with you that tip and everything else I've learned from the initial design stages of this scheme right through to the final installation. So what was that comment? Well, back in January 2023, Ben got in touch with me to say he'd been watching my knife sharpening vid and couldn't help noticing the electrician's grid of lighting on the ceiling. And what we're talking about here is when, for want of anything better to do, electricians will just put lanes of lighting symmetrically across your ceiling. What happens here is you typically end up with a brightly lit pattern of uniform lights, often cool white, non-dimming generally, and if you're lucky, the odd under-cupboard light. Now the problem with this sort of system is it takes no account whatsoever of the intended activities in your kitchen. Ben put it brilliantly when he said it prioritizes neatness of the pattern of lights in the ceiling over where the light should actually go. So basically it's either all on, all off, and perhaps with a bit of dimming if you're lucky. And that's exactly what I did in the old kitchen. There's a link to the vid on screen now. I installed a Very Light V Pro dimmer to our lighting system to try and give us a bit of mood lighting for, I don't know, entertaining friends, that sort of thing. But half the time I forgot it was there, so we were basically stuck with that classic electrician's grid. Now, Ben had made a bit of a mess of the lighting in his hall and landing, so he got in touch with a bloke who worked for a lighting company where the quality of the light and the design is very much a priority. He suggested I also pick his brains if I ever had the need, and it just so happened when I was doing this kitchen renovation, I suddenly remembered Ben's email. So what about this company? Well, Guy works for a company called Foss, where actually I've ended up buying my lights, but I must stress at this stage that other than giving me a small discount on my order, Foss haven't paid me anything to talk about them in today's video. The priority for me is to explain to you the methodology of what I've done in case you're doing something similar. So I combined my architect's plans with those of my kitchen designer to give Guy an idea of the space we were looking at. And he sent back some suggestions as to how I should light it. Initially, he sent over to me some basic notes and ideas. But when I pointed out the Velux window we had in this area, he refined that plan and we ended up with this lighting plan. Now, I'll run through the various elements of this plan in a minute, but just compare here for a moment what he'd come up with as against that classic electrician's grid I showed you earlier. And you can immediately see the glaring brutality of that symmetrical electrician's grid. So what have we got here? Well, at this point, I'm going to introduce Denise, who also sent a brilliant comment over recently with guidelines for anyone who is putting in a lighting system and had to do it before I produced this video, because she, like Ben, has been similarly moved by the brilliance of this design-led lighting experience, and a lot of what I'm going to say now is modelled on Denise's guidelines. Number one, multiple lighting circuits. This is key to producing your own professional style kitchen lighting system. The components I show you today are more expensive than your average LED GU10s from Screwfix or an electrical wholesaler, but you don't need to spend what I have to achieve similar results. I've got 7 circuits if you include these under cabinet lights, which I installed a lot later, so they're not on the main lighting switch circuit, they're on the separate switched fuse spur. More on that in a minute. In the kitchen where we've got these wall cabinets, the ceiling lights are meant to be lined up with the front of the cabinet. These couldn't be because we've got joists in the ceiling, so I've moved them as close to the joists as I could to do this job. The reason you do this is because when you're working, you don't want lights shining from behind, casting a shadow in front of what you're doing. Now, it doesn't matter that the joists were in the way because we've been able to tilt the lights to exactly where we wanted them to shine. Over here in the sink area where you're not constrained by wall cabinets, the lights are here shining down to the center of the worktop. The rule of thumb on this is 30 centimeters away from the wall. And the remaining 2 lights in this first circuit are these 2 up here. The idea being we'll have some sort of a seat or something down here at some point. Again, these lights can be angled to exactly where we want them. Circuit 2 is these 3 pendants above the island. And this is circuit 3. Remember, because of the Velux, we can't put downlighters in the ceiling. This didn't faze Guy though. He suggested this cornice here with an LED strip built into the top of it. What we love about this lighting here is it achieves a sort of different impact to what you would have had if we'd had ceiling spots. It lights the area, but in a softer way, and of course you don't have the glare from the lights above. And finally, we've got this 4th circuit. Guy specified, and I paid for, under cupboard LED lights. We decided not to put them in, but when we lit the whole place, we realized that there was a bit of a shadow cast under these units. So at the last minute, we retrofitted these LED strips under the cabinets, as I'll show you in the second part of this video. And so rather than being attached to the main lighting circuit, they're on a switch spur, as I showed you earlier. And I'm so pleased we did this because it's a really important element of our lighting system. I also spec'd LED strips for under the island. I haven't done this yet, could decide to do so in the future. Moving to this dining area, we've got the main circuit, which has two downlighters lighting up this pantry cupboard. Again, these are tiltable, which means you can have the light shining directly into the cupboard. And then on the same circuit, we've got another 1, 2, 3, 4 lights, which light the sort of walkway common area-y bits of the room. Circuit number 2, 3 downlighters on 20 degrees rather than the normal 30 degrees. They're just shining down to where hopefully the dining table's going to be. Next, we've got this LED strip in the aluminium slot profile, which I think is a very cool feature. Like all the others, it's dimmable, quite handy really, because that helps me to mask a few of the plastering issues I've got just here, which need to be filled. And finally, in what will be the utility room, we've got 4 more downlighters on 1 non-dimmable, straightforward, simple circuit. So these 6 circuits are wired into a 2-way switch system. We've got the Verilight V Pro dimmers here in the utility room on this slightly ugly but quite functional panel, with a slightly prettier switch here in the kitchen on these screwless sockets, which I really like. And for any of you thinking, why didn't you go for a more sophisticated, I don't know, Rayco style system, or maybe something with smartphone app functionality? My answer to that is I've already got 2 gateways in the kitchen. I don't want to make things complicated, and I want people who don't have the app to be able to easily switch it on and off. So that's why I decided to go down the more traditional route. Symmetry. Going back to Denise's brilliant guide, as she says, with this bespoke system, you have to throw symmetry out the window. You put the lights where you need them. Well, I have to say, with my slightly OCD tendencies, where I had got lights lining up, for example, along here, I did use my DIYte laser level to get them in a nice straight line. And this light here, which is on a different circuit to these 3 dining table lights, should have been central to this wall, but I couldn't resist lining it up with the 3 dining table lights. Although actually this might be handy if, as we're thinking, we decide to move the dining table into this corner. What about colour, or the light engine as Foss call it? Well, in the past I've always been tempted in a kitchen to go for that really anaesthetised cool white colour, which is a sort of laboratory clinic type sort of light. But in the soft furnishings industry, I worked a lot with lighting designers who made the point that you want a warm white because that's much more representative of a sort of daylight colour. So the main lights are 3000K 30 degree beam. The dining table lights are narrower 20 degree beam. The LED strips are also 3000K 14.4 watts. Each have their own transformer, and the undercovered LEDs run off this one. And the pendant light bulbs weren't chosen that scientifically. I ended up with 2700K 7.5 watt bulbs with that traditional looking LED filament. As I said before, the ability to angle, to pivot these spots is very cool. And I also really like the black linings inside the spot, something I'd never have thought about before, but it gives them a really premium finish and reduces glare. And so what about the cost? Well, these things aren't cheap. And here's a quick breakdown of the costs on my project. And at £110 for the combined cost of the downlight and trimless frame, you'll immediately be thinking how you could get something adjustable at a fraction of the cost elsewhere. Now, Foss will point to the tiny, ingenious design of this trimless frame that you plaster into the ceiling. They'd also point out the increased heat sinking capacity with that massive heat sink built into the top of the downlight, which of course is going to take heat away from the bulb and therefore increase the longevity of it. And they do offer a 5-year warranty. And don't forget GU10s, which are, you know, pennies, £3, £4 per bulb, have the transformer inbuilt, which is a good thing from one point of view, but it also means, of course, that the heat sinking ability is reduced. And I suppose by having everything inbuilt also, you're compromising on the quality of the diode and the potential output of the light. And Foss will also, I guess, point to the accuracy of the colour matching from their system. But is it worth the jump in price? And that will, of course, depend on your budget and whether you're wanting to go for a functional or premium look for your system. But anyway, time will tell whether that longevity actually bears out. I'll do an update video in a few years' time and let you know how I got on. My electrician came in and did the first fix of the electrics before the plasterboard went up. And armed with Guy's plan, we positioned the lighting cables roughly where we wanted the downlights, and I created a plan so I could remember where we'd position the cables once the plasterboard was up. Which was great, but it didn't stop us peppering the ceiling with holes as we kept moving the lights, as we were fine-tuning where we thought the dining table should go. We put rock wool in the ceiling to try and dampen sound travelling from the kitchen upstairs. What this has done is reduce the ceiling space. The downlights require a total void of 98mm, which is partly to guarantee enough space for the heat to dissipate properly from the heatsink in the light, but also because any less than this and you'll struggle to get the transformers up into the ceiling space. You can't put the transformers up beforehand, as then you can't connect the downlights to them, and you might need to remove them later down the line anyway if they fail. Anyway, suffice to say I was right on the limit in terms of the void space. With the ceiling up, I could then cut the 64mm holes for the lights before it was plastered, because I've gone for these trimless frames. With the first one drilled, I couldn't feel any electrical cable in the ceiling, and so we had to take the entire sheet of plasterboard down only to find it just outside finger's reach near the hole. So I bought this endoscope on Amazon and it's been a complete game changer. You plug it into your phone and you can immediately see each cable, which then gives you the ability to send your wire hook in the right direction to snag it. I then glued the trimless frame in position with my hot melt glue gun and then screwed it in place with drywall screws. I then jammed insulation wrapped in cling film into the hole to protect it whilst my plasterer Gerard plastered in the fitting. What I learned was it's important to take the plug out reasonably soon after the plastering's been finished, otherwise you risk staining the inside of the downlight with plaster. So as I said, I had a few LED strips to install. First off, I installed the undercupboard lights. My kitchen fitter had made the cupboards with removable base and sides, which gave me the idea of recessing the LED profile in the base. So I cut the base into two with my circular saw. My electrician put the cabling in from a switch to fuse spur, and I just needed to cut a channel in the plasterboard to link the cables between the two cupboards. Remember, these LEDs were very much an afterthought. The LED strips came with cable connecting each end, but I found this quite bulky. I don't like this end, this sealed end that comes with the strip, because it's too hard. It's really hard to get it into tight spaces. You know, if I put it into the strip in a minute, this is the diffuser bit, you've got all of that that's not going to be lit in the corner. So I came up with a new plan. So I trimmed the LED strip to the length I wanted it, used part of that tail that came with it, stripped and tidied up the wires, and then slotted them into these brilliant little connectors that I bought on Amazon. See, this can be turned at a much tighter angle with the light, with you still having plenty of LED in the strip. And by having this side off, it's quite handy because you can see that little channel I've put there for the electrics. All this is fully maintainable because all I've got to do is remove that rear panel. Onto the aluminium profiles, firstly the cornice which needed priming. I used Zinsser cover stain spray for this, with the backing plate screwed into place. Luckily I built this wall so I knew where there was a wooden stud behind. I pushed the cornice onto the backing plate and caulked the gap underneath for a seamless finish. I later applied a finished coat of emulsion, obviously not what you're meant to do with metal, but it dries fine and adheres well whilst giving you exactly the same colour and textured finish as the walls. I used the same Amazon connectors and the diffuser on top of the LED strip, which is stuck down with a self-adhesive strip. And finally it was onto that slot profile which runs 5 meters down the dining area wall and was the first to install as it needed to be inlaid above the plasterboard. The kitchen ceiling in our old cottage is irregular, but I worked out where it dipped and I mitered the join so the profile followed the ceiling. It does look a bit awkward, but the way it lights this area more than makes up for it. I primed the profile with Zinsser bin. I wish I'd pre-sprayed it with cover stain, but well, that just didn't happen. I then applied multiple coats of emulsion because I haven't got metal paint in a tint to match the walls, and also, as I said, because the emulsion guarantees the same colour and texture as the walls. I used the same connectors as with the others, And finally it was on with the diffuser. As you can see, it doesn't make a massive difference as the light is so well spread by the profile, but it will at least keep dust off the LED strip. So that's it. I hope you found today's video useful. As I said earlier on, you don't have to go for a system exactly like this, but I hope you've borrowed some ideas and thoughts from today's video that will help you to design the perfect lighting scheme for your kitchen. Any comments or questions, put them in the comment section below the video and I'll try and get to them over the next few days. And also, do please share your experiences of what you've done in your kitchen, because Ben and Denise's comments were instrumental in me putting this video together, so it's so valuable. Everything I've used, talked about today, will be in the description below the video, which of course you can access by clicking on the More button. I think I'll take a break from the kitchen next week. I've got some exciting outdoor projects to show you, an outdoor lighting scheme and some garden furniture I've designed before we come back in here to talk about the kitchen floor tiling that I did. So do please stay tuned, and if you're new to my channel, it would mean so much to me to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here, and don't forget to click the bell notification icon so you get notified of all my future uploads. See you soon.